The Nightcast before Christmas, sponsored by APAC, a team of people who can.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bruce Downey.
And I'm Liz Mathis. Welcome to this special edition of Nightcast. We call it the Nightcast before Christmas. And tonight, we'll look back at several of the stories that we brought you during 1999.
Some of those stories touched many of your hearts. Others changed lives forever. But we begin with something we've talked about all year long, Y2K. In a few days, we'll finally know how badly the Y2K bug will bite us. That is, if it bites us at all. No one is willing to say absolutely nothing will happen, but local power companies, phone companies, and hospitals say they're pretty sure the date change will be uneventful. TV9's Joe Coffey shows how, if anything does happen, people will be standing by ready to swat the Y2K bug.
The Cedar Rapids Police Department will be double-staffed around midnight New Year's Day. Expect a full command staff on duty, more officers on the streets, more mechanics in the garage, you name it.
Well, the police department and the city of Cedar Rapids as a whole is ready for the event. We've been planning for probably over a year citywide.
The police department's generator will be ready for action, so will the 911 center. Y2K could add some extra fireworks, but New Year's is a busy time for police anyway.
There's probably going to be some extra celebration because it is a millennium, and we hope that people won't drink and drive, but we'll handle things that come up in that respect, and you never can tell. The weather might not be cooperative, and we could always have severe weather at that time. That's always a complication, but we'll be ready for it.
The Linn County Emergency Management Agency will be staffed round the clock. They advise people to be prepared for any emergency all year long.
We hope that people are gearing up for the winter storm possibility, because that's probably, in all likelihood, that's a more realistic possibility that an ice storm will knock the power out more so than the millennium change.
The Linn County EMA is prepared to be the backbone of communication for any emergency. They have a standalone phone system, direct lines of communication to the state and federal governments. They even have a radio that can communicate with TV9's Weather Lab. If necessary, there are even more backup radio systems to use in this room. This is a ham radio. Using this, you can talk to people all around the world. Over here is another communication system. Using it, you can talk to the National Guard, the Civil Air Patrol, and the Emergency Operations Center in Des Moines.
We're saying relax. Enjoy all the festivities that are going on. Enjoy Christmas, but yet at the same time we're saying, as always, be prepared.
So backup systems are in place. The backup systems are in place. The police department is ready for anything. Let's see what happens. In Cedar Rapids, Joe Coffey, KCRG TV9 News.
Even if most computers prove to be Y2K compliant, Y2K hysteria could contribute to any potential problems. For example, it's not a good idea to pick up your phone and check for a dial tone at midnight New Year's Eve. Phone companies say their systems are compliant, but just like on Mother's Day, for example, if too many people pick up their phones at the same time, it could overload the system.
One of the biggest stories in Iowa City this year lit up the sky and changed the look of the downtown area forever. A fire started in the basement of Mondo's Sports Cafe early in the morning of March 26th. By sunrise, flames turned the three-story building into a pile of smoldering wood and bricks. TV9's Iowa City reporter Mike Wagner reported live from the scene of the fire. As we look back on the stories of 1999, he tells us firefighters had two choices when they arrived on the scene: save the building or save the people living inside.
The fire at the Mondo Sports Cafe couldn't have happened at a worse time for the people sleeping above the restaurant. About 14 people lived in 2 floors of apartments above Mondo's. The bar was a popular hangout, and often drunk patrons would pull the fire alarm for the apartments. So false alarms early in the morning were a common thing. But on this night, the fire alarm was for real.
At about 3 in the morning, the fire alarms were going off, so I looked out the window and we could see fire trucks and smoke down below, so I went and woke up my roommate, and we had to go out the fire escape because the smoke was so thick you couldn't even see down the hall.
The fire started in the building's basement, and firefighters say it had quite a head start before the alarms went off. When they arrived, rescue crews searched each floor for people. Many were saved just in time.
Some of the last people came down. Flames were starting to come up through the stairs coming down from the upper floor apartments. So it was, and shortly after we evacuated everybody, the building did collapse.
Many renters did not have insurance. They escaped with their lives and the clothing they were wearing.
My life is gone. Everything I owned was in that building. I don't have anything anymore, and I don't know what's going to happen now.
Neighboring businesses worried what would happen to their livelihood as well. The computers inside Mid-American Securities held vital client information, but firefighters were able to get inside before they started spraying water.
Well, the firemen did a great job. They tarped a lot of the south end of the building, and really we only had a couple computers that we had to replace.
Incident Commander Jim Humston says he thinks about the fire when he passes workers working on the new Mondo's building.
I walk away from there knowing that first, every occupant in there got out safely. We rescued a lot of people. Every firefighter walked away from there safe, went home that morning at 7. And the building's going to be rebuilt.
The 6-story building should be done by August of 2000. From the Iowa City newsroom, Mike Wagner, KCRG, TV9 News, Nightcast.
Firefighters sprayed 320,000 gallons of water on the fire. The cause was never determined.
Now, also this year, a devastating explosion and house fire killed 7 people in the small town of Richland. But others survived, and coming up next, you'll meet some of the people who helped save those lives.
And the spring started out dry, but that quickly changed. A look back at the floods of '99 as the Nightcast before Christmas continues.
Christmas is a time when family members come together, but for one Iowa family, the holidays this year are only a painful reminder of the time when those family gatherings were possible.
Jerry Usofsky and his daughter Marlena will be spending this Christmas without their mother and 6 other relatives. They all died in an explosion at the Usofskys' Richland home on Labor Day. Meanwhile, Bev Gardner and Barb Dyer, who have been recovering at Covenant Rehabilitation Center in Waterloo, are home tonight for Christmas. TV9's Renee Chu takes us back to the day when the unthinkable happened.
The magnitude of the incident was just shocking. And this never happens in a small community, but it did.
It was Monday, September 6th. That afternoon, family and friends were having a Labor Day barbecue at the Usofsky home in Richland. Then came an explosion that could be heard for miles.
The house was completely engulfed, and most of the house was actually in the basement.
People everywhere, ambulances, air care, law enforcement, firemen, everybody trying to help these people.
But there were 7 people rescue workers couldn't help. The explosion killed Juanita Usofsky and her daughter Ashley, Juanita's parents and her sister Marlene. Juanita's other sister Dorothy and Dorothy's husband Ed also died in the blast. There were 6 survivors. Bev Gardner of Iowa City and Barb Dyer of Richland both suffered burns on 70 to 80% of their bodies. They're undergoing therapy at Covenant Rehab Center in Waterloo. Josh Kleinmeyer and Trey Gartner of Iowa City also lived through the blast. And homeowner Jerry Usofsky and his daughter Marlena are rebuilding their lives in Fairfield. As far as what caused the home to explode, officials say it was a propane gas leak.
Owner of the residence had built a dog pen, and when he drove a steel post in it, had nicked
a LP line that leaked LP into the basement area. And then when something kicked on it, blew up.
After the explosion, many communities in Keokuk County held fundraisers for the survivors. One example is in Fairfield, where 4-H club members sold these jars of goodies to help Barb Dyer and her family.
Your heart has to go out to the survivors of the ones who died. The loss to a family, especially a very close family. This family was extremely close, and to lose so many of their numbers is just, I don't know how you describe it.
I think they need to think that they have a lot of people thinking about them and praying for them, and that we just hope the best for all of them.
In Keokuk County, Renee Chu, KCRG TV9 News.
After Christmas, Bev Gartner and Barb Dyer will return to Covenant Rehab Center in Waterloo for 5 hours a day of intensive therapy to regain their strength.
And we wish them well, of course, as they continue their therapy. Well, for thousands of Eastern Iowans, no doubt the toughest days of 1999 came in May. That's when sudden, massive rainfall sent many of our streams and rivers rushing over their banks.
And one of the people who kept us informed during those wet weeks was, of course, Denny Frary. And Denny, we will remember the spring of '99 as a wet one.
Oh, we certainly will. It's universal. Everybody got a lot of rain, too much rain. You know, many towns were hit hard, but the flood of '99 may have wiped the entire Clayton County town of Littleport right off the map. Almost all property owners in Littleport are taking part in a federal buyout program, and once that process is complete, their buildings will be torn down. As TV9's David Scott tells us, Eastern Iowa's raging rivers wiped out a lot of history, and only a few people are left to tell it.
The town of Littleport's Christmas of 1999 was largely washed away 7 months ago. In mid-May, the Volga River simply erupted. The town's 67 people evacuated, flushed out, most never to return again.
I'm 81 years old, and I can remember back 70 years, and I seen a lot of floods in Littleport, but never one nowhere near like this.
Henry Rodas and his wife Emma make up one of just 6 families who remain in downtown Littleport this Christmas.
This was the bank and post office. This is Jerry Brown's.
Damage here is so severe, the threat of future flooding still so high, almost all the neighbors had to move away. Henry and Emma knew this Christmas would be quiet based on an earlier holiday, Halloween.
Halloween is weird. There's no children came this year. Years back at Halloween, they'd come for them tricks or treats, and there'd usually be, 40, 42 a few times, wasn't there? Yeah. Nothing this year.
Most of the cars that drive down Main Street nowadays aren't familiar to the folks still living here.
I don't know who they are. I don't have no, I wave at everybody.
They're just passing through, some just wondering what a modern-day ghost town looks like.
It's quite a thing. What are you going to do?
But there are still folks like Art Honke, who remembers what Littleport used to look like when it was in its prime.
Oh, nice little town. It was a nice little town. There was about everything here, too, hardware store and tavern and grocery store and bank, and it's all gone. Yeah, it's kind of bad.
Bad that only memories now remain.
All the farmers, they brought their cream here to the creamery, they brought their eggs here, and heck, it was a booming little town.
Even I've got my own personal story about Littleport. The first time I came here, I didn't even know its name, and I'd only come here to ask for directions to get to someplace else. But as I looked around, I said, this is what a small town should look like. When I came back after the May flood, I didn't even recognize the place. The curvature of the main street, though, gave me a sense of deja vu. This town seemed somewhat familiar. And walking around now, the place looks only somewhat familiar to those who spent decades of life here.
I know it's different. That's all I can say. I don't know what to think. I know how it happened, and that's it.
In Littleport, David Scott, KCRG TV9 News.
In total, 30 Littleport property owners are taking part in the voluntary federal buyout program, which will cost the government an estimated $978,000.
And we certainly hope for better things for everyone in 2000.
Yes, and 2000 will probably have its share of weather calamities, but Eastern Iowans are tough. There was a Merry Christmas.
Same to you.
Merry Christmas to you, Denny.
Back to Littleport for a moment. Even though not everyone has received their share of the funds, most have found new places to live and have chosen to stay nearby in communities like Edgewood and Elkader, and the government will tear down the buildings that it has bought.
And one of the most heartbreaking stories from the May flooding involved a 6-year-old girl from Central City. She lost her home and everything in it. The floods filled Central City with germs that her little body couldn't handle. So, under doctor's orders, Jessica had to move away from her hometown, never to return, at least not until she recovers from cancer. The story does have a happy ending. TV9's James Clark takes us back for another look at Jessica Simmons.
There are moments you'd never know anything bad had ever happened to Jessica Simmons.
And so everything's molding and mildewing. So I'm trying to get it.
But it wasn't so long ago that Jessica had to leave everything behind. Her house was flooded and mildew meant germs. Germs could have been the death of Jessica, so she had to leave her home and leave her friends from school.
Here's a bedroom.
So little Jessica was homeless until someone donated the use of an apartment in Mount Vernon.
Raise your hand. What do you think you'll need?
Now she's making new friends at a new school.
Get those materials out so we can get started making our puppet.
Are you pretty grown up for 6 years old?
Mm-hmm.
How come you're so grown up?
I don't know.
School is a real happy time for her. It's a time where she can kind of forget about all her illness and the medications and everything else, and it's time for her to just sort of let down her guard and be a kid.
Mrs. Kramer, Jessica's first grade teacher, says Jessica is a joy to have in class. She still has to leave from time to time for chemotherapy.
I told them when I first got here, and I told them that I had cancer, me and my teacher.
Do they know what that is?
Whenever she goes into the hospital and she's gone for a week or so, the kids pile up cards on her desk to make her feel welcome when she comes back. And
I hear that every time you go to the hospital, you have a whole bunch of get well cards when you get back.
Uh-huh.
How does it make you feel?
Pretty good.
Pretty good indeed. Jessica often returns all this affection with a big smile or a hug. James Clark, KCRG, TV9 News.
Well, you may have noticed that little Jessica didn't have any winter boots in this story, but a community group in Mount Vernon gave Jessica some boots right after TV9 dropped by to see her.
Hope she has a Merry Christmas.
Oh, she will, I'm sure.
Some big changes happened this year in the world of Cedar Rapids city politics. Next, we'll show you how the new city council members are dealing with the changes in their lives.
And you can make a difference in a little boy's or girl's life. We'll show you next as the Nightcast Before Christmas continues. The new year will bring both a new face and a returning face to the Cedar Rapids City Council.
On January 3rd, a Cedar Rapids police officer will park his patrol car and begin directing the city's public safety department. And a former city finance commissioner will move back into the City Hall office he left 4 years ago. TV9's Dave Fransman says both incoming council members have been getting ready.
Trace wire all the way up and over to a J-box up the ceiling in order to feed that out.
For Cedar Rapids Housing Programs Director Lyle Hansen, picking the spot for a new electrical outlet is not what you'd call a big budget decision. On January 3rd, things change in a big way. Hansen begins overseeing the entire Cedar Rapids city budget then, now running about $260 million a year. That's definitely a step up. But as a two-term finance commissioner now returning to office, he's got a head start.
I have 4 years of experience, so that's made my learning curve relatively short on a number of different fronts. There's new issues come up that it's going to take me a little bit longer to get the rest of the story.
That's what Hansen and police officer Dave Zahn have basically done since the November election, tried to catch up on the rest of the story in city government. Both have shadowed current council members for weeks, sitting in on discussions, meeting city department heads, and getting ready for their turn to sit up front. As a total newcomer to politics, Zahn admits he was confronted with perhaps the biggest adjustment since his upset win in November.
Going from when I won the election Tuesday night to coming here Wednesday morning, I wasn't quite sure what to expect, and I was a little apprehensive.
To help the transition, he's hung up his uniform for now and taken a new temporary assignment at the Cedar Rapids Police Department. That job, with an office right next to Police Chief Mike Clapholes, involves mainly learning how to do his new job as safety commissioner. To go from one of 200 sworn officers to the boss is an eye-opening experience.
You know, and all of a sudden you've won the election, and you are now going to tell everybody here and over there and the other departments what to do, as opposed to being one of the persons that's being told what to do. And so there's the great unknown there.
Anything that's not on here that you were hoping that you had a time to...
But making the unknown known is part of the process of getting ready to help run city government. Both newcomers and returning council members have even met together in team-building exercises like this to get to know each other better. After all, beginning January 3rd, they are on the same team. Dave Fransman, KCRG, TV9 News.
Both Cedar Rapids Council newcomers, Lyle Hansen and Dave Zahn, have one thing in common. They each started working for the city of Cedar Rapids shortly after college.
Throughout the year, we've introduced you to many waiting children. They're all waiting for someone to take some time and spend some time. Many of the kids you met have found someone just like that in a new big brother or sister. One of them is 14-year-old Michael. TV9's Jenna Miller shows us how his new relationship brings joy to both big and little brother.
Basketball is one of Michael's favorite sports, along with football, baseball, and, well, anything related. He used to play them all with his dad until his dad died early this year. Now, Michael's new big brother, Mano, is helping to fill the void.
He watches football and plays sports with me and stuff. That's what my dad did all the time.
Mano is from India. A job at Rockwell Collins brought him to Cedar Rapids, where he didn't know many people. But now he knows he's found the perfect match.
It helped Michael out and helps me out both ways too, and it feels good inside to be able to help somebody and be there with someone.
Mano always wanted to be a big brother when he was in college, but didn't have the time. Now he does, so he gave it a shot.
It's much better than going home and sitting watching TV and doing nothing else. It's great to hang out with Michael, have somebody to play against except for the computer.
But when it comes to playing basketball, who will win?
Probably me.
Why?
Because he can't shoot.
We played in YMCA once, and yeah, that's one sport I never got. And yeah, he'll beat me pretty bad.
But no matter who wins the basketball game, Michael and Mano are both winners with each other, and with a lot in common.
He goes around saying, you know, the only thing we don't have in common is that I don't like Mountain Dew. So he loves Mountain Dew. Yeah.
But they both love to spend time together.
When we do stuff together, it's kind of good for me and kind of good for him too, since his family's in India.
But now they've both found a new family member, a brother.
It's a very rewarding experience. I'm just speaking off my personal experience, and there's nothing to lose.
If you're interested in becoming a big brother or sister, just call the Big Brothers Big Sisters office in your community at one of the numbers on your screen. More than 100 kids are waiting.
Great program. Well, this past year has seen a lot of changes in the sports world. Locally, we've had to get used to a couple of new Hawkeye coaches' names, Steve Alford and Kirk Ferentz.
But the biggest story might possibly be this man. We'll talk with Cedar Rapids native and St. Louis Rams quarterback Kurt Warner next as the Nightcast Before Christmas continues.
Nearly every high school football player has a dream to make it in the NFL. Not many ever realize that dream. Well, one Cedar Rapids native has made it into the National Football League, but it certainly wasn't an easy path. Kurt Warner played for several teams before finally making it big with the St. Louis Rams.
And John Campbell joins us tonight. John, it took Kurt Warner a long time to get to where he is today.
It took him a long time, but what a story his is in 1999.
We as Iowans, of course, are mighty proud what Kurt has accomplished this year, but in this day and age of instant gratification, play me or trade me, throw me the ball attitudes, it is Kurt's sheer determination, his persistence, his patience that makes his such a great story. TV9's Scott Sable brings us up to date.
Watching Kurt Warner as a junior at Regis High School back in 1987, he hardly looked like he would become an all-pro quarterback someday. In this game against LaSalle, he threw 2 interceptions, 1 for a touchdown. Remember that game your junior year?
Man, I don't know. I don't want to talk about my junior year. We weren't very good. But
2 picks in that game, but after that, your senior year, I saw all touchdowns.
You don't got to talk about that now. It's a long time ago. Changed my ways now.
Kurt really worked hard on his game and had a great senior year, leading Regis to the playoffs while throwing 19 touchdowns in 9 games. And his high school coach remembers his big arm.
He just had amazing arm strength, and looking back at some old films this year after, reminiscing a little bit, he was throwing 50, 60, 70-yard strikes downfield.
It was a long road to NFL fame, Regis to UNI, to the Arena League, to NFL Europe, to the Rams. But all along, Kurt kept his faith.
You never know what plan the Lord has for you, and so I tried to just focus on Him and follow the path that He had. And there was times where I didn't know if this was in the plans, if this was in what He wanted me to do. But I kept following Him and focusing on Him.
And boy, has that faith paid off. Kurt leads the NFL with 36 touchdown passes, tied for 5th highest single season total in NFL history. And Warner's led the Rams to a 12-2 record, clinching home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Hey, how's it feel to clinch the home field advantage, buddy?
Man, it feels great. It's great to do it with 2 games left. Now we get healthy and get ready to come back here in January.
Are you amazed at what he's done?
Totally. It's been a special year, so we're real happy with him.
Think he can make it to the Super Bowl?
All the way.
When I was here a couple of months ago, you couldn't find a Kurt Warner jersey. Now look, they come in all shapes and sizes. If only Mookie was a boy.
We got about 6 jerseys in the 4th game, and I had people lined up. They didn't care what size it was. They wanted them.
What do you think of all the attention that he's getting?
It's crazy. It's weird. He's still my kid, and it's crazy that everybody wants a piece of him. And Kurt thinks it's crazy, too.
Success couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. Kurt, who is a deeply religious family man, represents everything great about sports.
We need role models. And Kurt Warner is no phony, okay? He's a humble, simple, sincere, smart, talented young man, and has been for a long time. And he's been very, very persistent. And he's had a faith that's kept him going.
Hats off to Kurt Warner and the Rams. Also hats off to Dedrick Ward, Tim Dwight, Michael Rohn, and Chad Hennings. All young men who played high school football right here in our backyards and who are now playing in the National Football League.
Great stories, all of them.
Yes.
And tell Scott, Mookie can still wear that jersey.
You bet. I think she should get one for Christmas.
Just because she's a girl, she can wear that
You
jersey.
bet.
Have a good Christmas, John.
And that wraps up our look back at some of the biggest stories that we reported during 1999.
Hey, but 99 isn't over yet, and during the next week, we'll be reporting on the last big story of the year, yes. Y2K. We hope you all have a Happy New Year.
But now, take a few minutes and watch your screen. We'll be showing you the names of the many hardworking people who work here at TV9.
And from all of us at TV9, happy holidays. Have a good night.
The Nightcast Before Christmas has been sponsored by APAC, a team of people who can.